So I want to officially welcome everybody. Hello, I'm Heather Lorenz. I'm the Visual Arts Manager here at the Northfield Arts Guild, and welcome to this virtual reception for I Know I'm Home When. I will start by sharing a couple of Zoom tips. As Angelique asked, yes, this is a webinar, so you're going to see the participants. We're going to be featuring, focusing on the artists today versus a meeting where you would see everybody in attendance. During this event, you can toggle between the participants and the slideshow. And if you need to make the slideshow smaller and so you can see all the artists, there's a double line. You can drag it and adjust as needed. And I'm going to ask all of our artists, if we're not already muted, to please mute. And I'm going to change the speaker view here so we can keep it on our speakers. And welcome again to everybody that's tuning in. I wanted to make sure that we highlight all of the community members and artists that were involved in this exhibition. There are over 70, and some of whom we'll be hearing from tonight. And I'd like to thank the Minnesota State Arts Board for their generous support of the Guild and this project. And thank you to the McKnight Foundation and to Carleton's Public Works Initiative for making this exhibition possible. Many thanks to Rebound Enterprises for sponsoring our entire season of gallery exhibitions this year. And then finally, a huge thank you to all of our members, donors, and sponsors. Your continued support makes it possible for us to continue making great art and showcasing great art in our community. So how is this virtual reception going to go tonight? First, we're going to go over some overall exhibition photos. We will hear from all of the participating artists accompanied by a slideshow of images, followed by a time for questions and answers. So in the chat box, anytime during the presentations as you're listening to the artist talk, if a question comes up, please feel free to type in a question for them. We will go to questions after all of the artists have presented. And if you, some folks have already started doing this, if you would like to send a message to one of the artists, please also put that in the chat box too, because they'll be able to see it. You can pick who it goes to, either by selecting presenters or to everyone. And we're so glad that you joined us tonight. This is the virtual reception for I Know I'm Home When. This is a multi-layered, multimedia exhibition which features many community and regional artists with strong ties to Northfield, whose work calls us to reflect on how we experience and envision our community. At the heart of this exhibition is the community quilt. It's comprised of quotes gleaned from audio testimonies recorded by Northfield residents in 2019 through the Wandering House Project. That is Cecilia Cornejo's multi-platform endeavor that explores the concept of home from a rural perspective. All of the quotes respond to the prompt, I know I'm home when, and were carefully embroidered by 60 community members working in close collaboration with Cecilia. And I'll just ask our artists to all mute, please, if you're able to. Another feature of this exhibition is Cecilia's sound collage installations. These are based on audio recordings reflecting many moods and perspectives of community members. And there are 2 sound station installations in the show. In these photos, you can also see individual quilted pieces that represent sentences that were repeated over and over by participants in the Wandering House Project. I Know I'm Home When also includes the work of artists working in painting, photography, time-based media, artist books, ceramics, and prints. As a whole, the show offers multiple points of entry for audiences to reflect and envision ways to create places where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued. And now we'll be hearing from the individual artists and that were involved in making this show happen. We're going to start with Cecilia Cornejo, and you just have so much to talk about. I'm just going to turn it over to you right now. So please join me in welcoming Cecilia.
Thank you, Heather, and thank you for thanking all the organizations that I was going to thank, because that gives me a little bit more time. So thank you everyone who is here tonight. I'm very pleased and honored to be sharing this space and time with my fellow artists with ties to Northfield. My name is Cecilia Cornejo Sotelo. I am from San Antonio, Chile, and I live and work in Northfield, which is the unceded land of the Wapekute Band of the Dakota Nation. Next. I mentioned this because it's important for me to position myself as an outsider to this place, as a visitor and as an immigrant. Because this investigation of home for me, it's quite long-standing. I've been living, I was calculating this right before, and it's about 26 years that I've been living in the States and in the Midwest. So this idea of home it's something that I've been exploring through different means. Particularly in Northfield, this was done with the kids from the Key, the Northfield Union of Youth, between 2012 and 2016. With them, we made this film about the skate park. Next, and you know, and now just this past year, I was able to finish another feature-length film with the Latinx community who lives, you know, in Northfield. Next, so these two films, you know, Making Noise, the story of a skate park, and Ways of Being Home, between Northfield and Maltrata, the town where many of the Mexican people who live in Northfield actually come from. These two films are basically asking this fundamental question, you know, what does it mean and what does it take to belong to a given community? Next. And so in working with very young people and in working with immigrants such as myself, what I noticed that I was doing, it's kind of like mapping marginality in Northfield. But then I wanted to extend that idea of thinking about home to the larger community. And that's what brought me to the Wandering House. And we can go to the next one. It was important to me that this asking of questions about what home means to you happen in a space created exclusively for that purpose. You know, it wasn't a survey that I was going to give to people or interviews that I was going to have, as I thought at first, from the van that I used to have, you know, which turned out to be very creepy of an idea very quickly, you know. So creating this space from a former fish house, which is very Minnesotan tradition, and converting it into an audio recording studio where people could come and take their time to be with themselves and answer these questions was really important to me. Next. So basically these were the questions, you know, what does home mean to you? What vision do you have of Northfield? How do you feel in this place? And what vision do you have for the community? How do you wish it were? Next. And so I'm repeating a lot of what Heather said, but it's very important to me to clarify that what comes into this exhibition is coming from this work done in 2019 as an investigation of what the community, how the community saw itself and how we wanted to be. Next. So people were given a questionnaire to consider. But once they went into the house, they had the time and the space to themselves. Some people stay there for 2 minutes, some people stay there for 30 some minutes. Next. And from Bridge Square, it went all around Northfield. It went to the Key, it went to the Northfield retirement community. We worked with people in Laura Baker. We took it to Viking Terrace, the Community Action Center, et cetera, et cetera. And I was also invited to take the house as an artist in residence in Lanesboro. So this project has a sister project, you know, going on at the same time right there where I was invited through Lanesboro Arts. Next. So because some of these, this is a summary of what I have collected, you know, over summer and fall of 2019, after 50 days of direct interaction with people, about 270 recordings with 42 hours of recorded material, of which what's represented in the exhibition, it's only about 1%. Next. I'm working on having the time to sit with that material and sift through it. So from one of these questions that was proposed through the Wandering House, there was this prompt, I know I'm home when, that I was asking people to complete. And by selecting 50 some of these sentences is that the embroidery project was launched, inviting people in Lanesboro and in Northfield to embroider these sentences. Next, so people received a piece of fabric, some embroidery floss, a needle, a sentence. I was able to, because I got some funding, I was able to get gift cards to the Northfield Yarn, and the people could go there and buy additional yarn. And next. And so I assemble a bunch of embroidery kits, which I was very impressed and happy to see that were claimed in less than 10 days. So that showed me, yes, that there was interest on part of the people to actually participate in this project. And a huge thanks are due to Northfield Yarn for spreading the word in their newsletter, you know, and of course to the Arts Guild, which actually was the hub where people would come and claim their kits. I would go and drop them off, considering how strange and complicated things have been with COVID. It was great to have the Arts Guild do that. And of course, a huge thanks is due to the embroidery artists and enthusiasts, you know, who decided to embark with me on this project. Next, and I'm running out of time, so let's. So I was very, very happy that I don't know how to quilt. I mean, that is not what made me happy, actually. What made me happy was that I knew Cindy, and Cindy knew how to quilt. And she was an expert, and she was willing and not afraid, you know? And she was like, oh, I think I can do this. So she was the one who actually made it come together. But I was really interested in the idea of this as a quilt, because quilts are made from pieces of fragments. And I was even more, you know, excited about that none of these were exactly alike. And to me, that really spoke to the fact that this was community made. Here you have not only a range of sentiments around this idea of home, but also a range of abilities when it comes to embroidering. You know, I hadn't embroidered since I was like 12. So, you know, other people had been embroidering for many years. So it's really nice, at least to me, to see that diversity reflected on this kind of like unorthodox, if you will, quilt. Next. So I'm very happy that the quilt is being shown in Northfield to the community that produced it, and that the Lanesboro quilt will be shown for the first time early next year at Lanesboro Arts, and that then with the quilt from Northfield and the quilt from Lanesboro, in addition to more sound pieces, etc., it will have a show at the Rochester Arts Center and hopefully in other places as well. Next, I think. on that note, and I'm almost finished, I just want to say that in May, I will be launching the Wandering House Goes Virtual, asking people again in Lanesboro and in Northfield to record their thoughts on how notions of home have changed under the pandemic and the uprising, the social uprising after the killing of George Floyd. And in this case, you will be able to upload that audio file directly to the Wandering House website. Next. And that takes me to, I think, my second to last. So with this material that I've been accumulating, the intent is to make a couple different films and a sound mapping website, kind of like what you see here, where you could go and click on individual stories from people who have participated, but also ambient sounds that reflect that you can get to know Northfield, not by looking at like picturesque pictures, of the quaint town that we seem to be, but you really get a kind of almost like an X-ray vision because you're actually listening to what people have contributed to the project. And I think that that's it. The last thing is, again, all this work, it's trying to get at this idea of how do we create communities that are changing, that people are coming in from somewhere else and people are leaving. So these are dynamic places that are changing. How do we make the conditions, to make sure everybody can grow and prosper? And with that, the next one, I just want to reiterate my thanks to everyone who participated in the Wandering House project, in the embroidery project, thanks to the Arts Guild, and also the artists who are here today, and of course, the people who are here at the webinar. So that's it.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. I've been so looking forward to hearing your thoughts around this. I mean, I've known a little bit as we've been planning for almost 2 years now for this exhibition, and all the layers and what you're thinking about going forward and how this is going to continue to build. I know that this is going to spark questions for me of you. And so I'm hoping that folks will put their questions for you that we can answer to it in the question and answer session. The multi-layered and the snippets, I just really encourage people to come in and stand in the gallery and listen while you're also seeing the quilt and hearing the people saying the sentences. And it really does spark these conversations of what does home mean to us and what is community to us and what do we want it to be. And so I just thank you so much for sharing this amazing concept, and it's going to keep going. So yay. And I know next we're going to hear from the community artists or the community quilt artists. And so Cecilia.
So I am going to introduce them all at the same time. So in this case, Cindy, Jean, and Margit can take it right after one after the other. Okay. So like I said, Cindy, I'm so impressed. I'm not easily impressed, but I've been so impressed because, oh my gosh, like talk about flexibility and skill and, just being able to take on something that is quirky and kind of hard to master and just taking it with grace and alacrity, all of those things. I love people who can do that and be enthused by it as opposed to intimidated. So Cindy has been an amazing partner. Jean contributed with embroidering, but also with helping with the quilting of the individual pieces. And again, went all out in that regard. And Margit, the same thing, she embroidered a couple pieces, not just one, helped with also quilting individual pieces. And also she's the person who, she didn't know, I didn't know that the window, the stained glass window that I got from her was going eventually to go into the wandering house, which I'm still kind of like, wow, how did that happen? So yes, that's my introduction to the three of them. And of course, my thanks.
All right, Cindy, take it away.
Okay, so when Cecilia asked me to do this project, I saw right away there were going to be three particular challenges. One was that the embroidered pieces are not uniform sizes. Then just the size of the completed project was going to be very large. And then the embroidered pieces themselves were going to be so individualistic that figuring out how to quilt them was going to be a challenge. So this first picture is my solution to that, how to deal with the non-uniform sizes. Cecilia and I first met in the basement of the Arts Guild, and we had 45 of the finished pieces laid out on tables. But there ended up being 49. So I took those home and I didn't have the space to lay them out. I came up with this black grid that I had removable sticky stuff on the back of these pieces so I could move them around and get it to the final layout that I got. So next. Once I had decided on the layout, I had to move to graph paper where every square was 1 inch, because I had to very precisely know how big all of these pieces of fabric were going to be cut so that it would all lay flat when it was finished. The most nerve-wracking part of cutting these pieces was actually cutting the embroidered pieces, which were cut to size plus a 1/4 inch seam allowance around each one. But no mistakes, thank goodness. Next. So this kind of gives you an idea of the largeness of this quilt. This is the top section of it. It's almost 12 feet long. I've made longer pieces in this, but not as wide as what I had. I knew that I was not going to be able to fit this whole quilt through my sewing machine. So another part of designing this quilt was figuring out how to divide it into sections that could be combined once they were completely quilted. And so this shows that. Here we see the different sections, the bottom section there with the wandering house on it, and the middle section there. So after I pieced each of the 5 sections together, I cut batting and backing material to the proper size and pin basted them with safety pins and quilted each one before joining it together. So that's what you see there, and this is my workspace. Next. Here's a picture of the whole quilt. Once I had sewn just 2 of the sections together, it was so big that I could no longer look at it really in my studio space. So I was reasonably sure that it was all laying flat and going to go together, but it was still quite a relief to take it to the Arts Guild and have it hung and see that it all worked. Next. This close-up gives you a little idea that third challenge of how to quilt all those very different embroidered pieces. Some of them had a lot of embroidery on them. It was very dense. Some of them were very lightly embroidered. My first thought was that I was just going to have a very simple scheme that I used on each one. But as soon as I saw the embroidered pieces, I saw that wasn't going to work. So you can get a little idea of just how different the quilting is on each one. Next. And here's a picture of me and Cecilia standing next to the quilt. If you haven't been able to go down to the Guild yet, this gives you an idea of the scope of the piece. Cecilia was just so great to work with. You know, this was her vision, and I was always conscious that this was her concept, but she encouraged me to use my own creativity and add all that to it. I wanted to talk a little bit about the butterflies. She had a piece of monarch butterfly fabric that she handed to me and said, if you could include this some way, that would be really great. And I had seen her Ways of Being Home documentary, which those of you who have seen it, she uses the fluttering butterflies through that. And so I took that fabric, which had a lot of overlapping pieces, so it didn't lend itself to cutting out individual butterflies very much. So I added some other coordinating fabrics and have the fluttering butterflies on it too. So that's a little bit about how the quilt came to be. And I'll pass it to, I guess, Jean next.
Thank you, Cindy.
So can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, I learned to embroider at my mother's knee and I hated it. She saved the crumpled, dirty piece that you see here by washing it and ironing it and putting a border around it. I was much more interested in active play, and I didn't go back to embroidery until my mom and dad's 50th wedding anniversary. Next, when I made a quilt from squares that their brothers, their sisters, their children, and their grandchildren. And you see Mom and my nephew Brian looking at the piece that he designed. When Celia next put out the call for embroiderers of all skill levels to visualize the words of the community members, I was intrigued and wanted to see what they wrote that was different from Robert Frost's poem. Home is the place where, when you have to go there, they have to take you in. I should have called it something that you haven't to deserve. I wanted to say much more about home, and I wanted to visually embrace the words that the town has pulled together. At the time when the immigrants were struggling to find homes, I wanted to show common desire of all people. This is a piece, these two pieces were pieces that didn't get embroidery because they didn't get finished. And I just designed some graphics for these parts. Next. I tried to make this one with showing about caring. I tried to make the hands embracing the heart of all flesh tones so that I used 5 threads spun together. Both of these were just really fascinating to try to make diverse and yet joined. And I want to thank Cecilia and the poets that conceived of this large idea of honoring homes, and these smaller poets that express so many different views of home. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Jean. Margit?
Thank you. Last summer, I heard that Cecilia was recruiting volunteers to embroider sentences that finished her Wandering House prompt that you've heard of. I thought, what a good idea, just like Jean. I liked the Wandering House project and I knew how to embroider. So I signed up for a medium length sentence and picked up my kit at the Guild. And Cecilia described the contents of that kit, which was especially made for each of us. The sentence, excuse me, can you just go back for a minute? The sentence that we each received gives us our quotation that we're working with. And then the number at the end of the sentence is the age of the person who said it, because there are sentences that would be peculiar for a 75-year-old, but were absolutely apropos for a 9-year-old. And you'll pick that out in the quilt. So my sentence was, people say hello to me with recognition in their eyes. Next. I sketched some designs. As a gardener, I thought that perhaps black-eyed Susans could represent eyes and tulip-like flowers might pass for waving hands. Next. Once I transferred the design to the linen, I began to embroider, which turned out to be a perfect indoor solitary activity during the pandemic. The longer I worked on it, the more apropos the saying became. Next. I realized that wearing our COVID masks left our eyes as the best way to say hello to passersby. Next. I embroidered another shorter sentence later. This one was, I know I am home when I can relax. Several people had said the same thing, so Cecilia planned for multiple versions of the same sentence. My embroidery was rather abstract, with tightly wound, anxious coils loosening into relaxed, watery waves. Next. I was delighted that another person embroidered the same sentence as warm socks and a cable sweater, a good book, a cup of tea, and a sleeping cat. Next. Cecilia gathered us together on Zoom several times to share ideas, suggestions, and encouragement. Even during the height of the pandemic, I felt we were becoming a community of embroiderers. Next. So thanks to Cecilia for initiating this project, and to Cindy for bringing us, our community, this quilt or this embroidery community, together in the form of this beautiful quilt. I only hope that someday we can all gather in person to enjoy our work together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of the artists that have shared so far. And I would encourage you to utilize that chat box and ask any questions that came up while they were presenting. There have been some great questions that have already been asked in there that we will get to in the question and answer session. So thank you. Yes, I too was a new embroiderer for this project, and just how it brought so many community members together during this time when we were staying apart was just awesome. So we're going to go on to Allison Albright, and she has given me some remarks to read on her behalf tonight. Allison is an artist living in Northfield. She is also a wife, mom, and pharmacist. Allison specializes in watercolors, as she enjoys their fluidity and softness, and says she is grateful to be included in this talent-filled exhibition. Of this painting, she states, "A playground can serve as a community for children. Watch as the children play with their old friends and new friends, finding they belong." This painting was inspired by numerous visits to playgrounds with her two children, who are now teenagers. Allison said she was always amazed at how comfortable they felt making new friends at the local playground. This piece depicts one of those perfect sunny days. She applied a specific technique on the blue sky to add texture and to mimic the geodome play structure they had in their own backyard. And now we will go, we'll invite Megan Dwyer to speak. Megan is a Minneapolis artist exploring movement and transformation in her printmaking. Please welcome Megan.
Hello. I'm so grateful to be here and want to extend thanks to everyone who made this opportunity possible. I have felt at home in Northfield many times in my life, and this experience has been no exception. The piece I'm showing in this show is called Dance of Creation. It is one of 8 woodcut black prints in a collection I'm releasing later this year called Creation Study. Creation has been my fascination and my muse for a while, and my pieces are inspired by recovered drawings found in my sketchbooks and my journals, in which I have tried to make sense of creation, the creative process, and my place in all of it. You can go to the next slide. This piece began its trip into being with this spontaneous sketch that you can see here on the left, during a time when I was reflecting on cycles of life and death, what it feels like to be in the creative process, and completing a training in circle facilitation. It has become something of a guidepost for me and the work I do and hope to do with my business, Studio Red Pine. Can you go to the next slide? The repetition in the creative process, some of which is shown in these photos here, has taught me to enjoy and find presence wherever I am within it, because it is constantly moving and changing and progressing again and again. Each phase of creating a piece takes long enough for me to be fully immersed within it, but not so long that I lose sight of the overall vision that I have for my collection. This has made creating these pieces feel really meditative and devotional. Next slide. I see this piece as both representing the perpetual motion of creation with its natural rise and fall of creative energy, and also the power of gathering in community to see yourself in someone else's experience and exchange wisdom through thoughtful listening and sharing, in all the phases of the creative process. As I mentioned in speaking to my inspiration for this piece, I am trained in facilitating a process called Circle, which is essentially a method for meaningful gathering in which I feel called to serve creative beings because I believe a sense of belonging comes from being seen and heard in all the messiness of the creative process. It is my dream to build a studio just outside of Northfield to welcome creative beings to circle and experience that sense of belonging through reciprocity with the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Megan. Oh, I love all these aspects of community and gathering and belonging that thank you for sharing. Next, we're going to hear from Toni Easterson. She is an artist working in fiber arts and mixed media, and then some, and has lived in Northfield for 18 years. So please welcome Toni.
I'm happy to be here. Wonderful show. The pictures in front of you are pictures of an artist's book. Actually, it's called Purse Poems, and one of my ideas of home is my poetry group. So I made a little book with asking each of the poets in the group to write a poem for the book. Well, they teased me a little bit about always having a poem in my purse, which I so often do as I write them wherever I am. So this is how it all came about. And I'm looking here at, I see Jane McDonald's poem and Marie Gary's, and my poem is on the right there. Yes, it's different papers and different kind of type styles, I think, for each poet. There's Ricky Coble Nelson's poems. Ricky is also in the show. So that's my little purse poem project, artist books. And too, the front of the purse is very heavily embroidered. I'm an embroiderer of long time. So that's it. And I guess you see that we meet Tuesday at 2:00. Here's my other artist book. When this came about, what do you think of Northfield? I always hear the sound of the train, and I've never lived where a train is part of our thinking. So I made this little artist book, and I spent a lot of time in advertising and type design. So the type itself works as a design with no other art involved, just the styles of type or the placement of, like library, I broke it up into symbols, into syllables, and St. Olaf and WKY. Jesse James is in the form of a gun. So you have all these little type doing the art for you when you look at it. And it was great fun. I had lots of fun doing it, and fabulous to be a part of this group of artists and folks working on the idea of home. Thank you.
Thank you, Toni. Thanks so much for sharing. Gail Gates is next. She's a recent resident of Northfield, working in photography, and please welcome Gail.
Good evening. My husband Tad and I made Northfield home about 3 years ago. And sadly, in many parts of our state, country, and world, it's considered both foolish and dangerous for a woman to go out for a walk by herself. I'm a farm girl at heart and was raised to believe in the goodness of people. But about a bajillion years ago, when I was in college in another city in Minnesota, it was a beautiful spring night like this, and I went for a walk by myself, and I was molested. I almost never ever think of that, but ironically, when I was pondering the idea of home recently, I was out for a walk by myself on a rainy evening, and eventually I caught sight of another woman ahead of me, and she was also out for a walk by herself with her little dog. And I snapped a photo of her because it occurred to me that neither of us were fearfully casting glances around or feeling a sense of danger. And it was a powerful and delightful insight. Therefore, being home to me, among other things, means feeling secure. And that is why I named the image of the woman walking her dog in Northfield safe. It's an awareness I hope I never take for granted. For those of you who are interested about my photographic process, I take pictures with either my iPhone or my Nikon and then apply layers of apps until I get an image that is impressionistic in feeling. I love, love, love to add color and texture and enough unknowns to allow the viewer to consider and to connect in their own way. I playfully refer to my photographic art as app dancing. I am so, so pleased and honored to be a part of this project and in this community of artists and the good, good people of Northfield. Thank you for allowing me to be here and to share my art with you.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you for sharing. Hannah Hamalian is next. She began her career as a filmmaker and her relationship with dance as a student in Northfield. Welcome, Hannah, to share more.
Thanks, Heather. Yeah, so my piece in the show is a short film called The Desire of Mermaids. And it's a film that's partially digitally animated, hand-drawn, and then partially live action film. Some of it that I downloaded, some of it that I recorded myself in my travels. And this is a project that I made in 2018. I was living in Milwaukee at the time, and I was invited to be part of a program of artists and dancers who were making films and filmmakers who were working with dancers. So it was very collaborative. And I thought of this film when I heard about this exhibition because in addition to kind of involving this like sense of water and dance, which are connected to Northfield for me, it's also, I kind of choose to tell a story or retell the story of the creation of a mermaid, this mythical being, and was kind of grappling with my own, trying to understand my sense of what it meant to belong, what it means to be enough of one kind of a thing or another. So what does it mean to be woman enough? What does it mean to be person enough of a particular kind? So the story in this film, it's a little bit abstract, but is essentially the story of a group of women who are kind of trying to figure out what they want to be, how enough are they going to be. They're given a choice. You can choose to be a person or you can choose to be a fish. And they decide, no, we're going to rebel. We're going to be a mermaid instead, and kind of pave their own way as this like way to be free as a person. So it's kind of what I was thinking about as I was working on this. And this is connected to Northfield for me because through many routes, through very circuitous paths. I was originally from Lakeville, grew up going to watch movies at the Lakeville Movie Theater, moved to Texas when I was a teenager, and then came back to Minnesota as a student at Carleton, where I started my career as a filmmaker and also took classes as a dancer as well. Then moved away, came back eventually to teach at St. Olaf last year, and then moved away again. So I'm now based in Eugene, Oregon, and I'm slowly figuring out how to make this place home while continuing to be tethered to these many other places that I've been to. So I think in terms of trying to understand home, it's been very special for me to have this film included in this exhibition because Northfield continues to be a place that I've returned to. And even in seeing the other work, in seeing familiar words like Jesse James and seeing the map of Northfield, seeing St. Olaf and Carleton, you know, my heart is really like touched by seeing those. And it reminds me of how grounded I am in that place. So I'm just so happy to have this work included. And thank you so much to Cecilia for creating the space for this, and for Heather for organizing it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing. All of these layers of what home means and belonging is, thanks to everybody for, I mean, that's the whole point of the show, but yeah, it's yay. Next, Thomas Hardy gave some remarks for me to give on his behalf tonight. He is an artist who explores environmental and political themes in his paintings. This was the map of Northfield that Hannah was referring to. Of this piece, he states, all maps are imperfect and selective, owing to the particular knowledge and experiences of the map maker and the impossibility of depicting all of the constantly changing elements and beings that make up a landscape. He says, I wanted to show a nuanced sense of place, juxtaposing natural and architectural landmarks, farmer and pollinator, past and present, wild and human, vast spaces and intimate details. The drawing expresses a complex, imperfect, subjective sense of Northfield as a place, a messy collage of memories and experiences which combine to form a landscape. And I will encourage folks as they're listening to these artists, if there are questions, the chat box is where we're going to put those questions and remarks for our artists, and we will get to them in a little bit. Next, we're going to hear from Ricky Coble-Nelson. Ricky is a longtime Northfield resident who explores painting, collage, mixed media, and more. Please welcome Ricky. Ricky, if you're able to unmute.
There we go.
There we go. There you are. Hello.
Hello. I grew up in Austria in a village surrounded by 3 high mountains in an extended family with much gathering and celebrating. In search of advanced education with detours of jobs and a Greyhound bus trip for 99 days, I moved away from my home country and eventually ended up in Northfield, where I started my very small family of 3 with my husband and our son, Benno, whom some of you know quite well, far away from any relatives. So initially, I didn't really feel at home because it was just too flat around here. But my friendships with artists and poets gave me a sense of groundedness, connectedness. And I actually started an artist group, and I started a poetry group, which has been going on for 40 years, and Tony is part of that group. I also joined the Arts Guild, and decades ago, and that contributed to my sense of establishing myself in this community, apart from the colleges. These days, I really depend on my good neighbors, and we have fabulous, fabulous neighbors in a very stable neighborhood. And I see them, I talk with them. Last year, it was across the driveway, across the street. And we talk to each other, we consult each other. Judy Code lives across the street, and she is the gardener, and the Bengstons are next door. But I'm also very much hopeful when I see the lights at night, the lamp lights in the windows. And the one painting shows, this is an older painting. That's the first painting, and that's my looking for connectedness from one realm to another, more symbolically than literally, or representationally. And then the other one, the other painting is actually our backyard with the big trees that we have planted. I'm not able to do much gardening because of back issues, but our trees are fabulous, and we sit out there after dinner often. But at night, I really enjoy these little beacons of warm light, my neighbors, and it gives me comfort and a sense of home. And I'm very pleased to be once again included in an exhibit at the Arts Guild, with which I have a long history. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricky.
Not sure about the grammatical construction here.
That was
Quite good.
wonderful.
It was good.
It was. Thank you, Ricky. Next, we're going to hear from Joanna Manning. And Joanna is a ceramic artist from Minneapolis, and her work deals with gathering community and belonging. And take it away, Joanna.
Hello. Yes, I'm Joanna Manning, and I'm a multimedia artist. Like Heather said, I also work in ceramic and sculpture. Thank you so much, Heather, and the Watering House, and Cecilia, for this opportunity to show my work. This first slide is the good old installation shot. I have 2 paintings and a sculpture here, and then these are 3 out of the 4 pieces that are currently on view. Next slide, please. This is a detailed image of the 3 paintings, sculptural paintings that I have on view: Coming, Container, and Belong Together. I love sculpture, and I love the dimension of it, and I love surface and texture. So a lot of my work, in this case, ceramic on panel, I create from a self-curated library of warm colors and shapes abstracted from the human body and spiritual symbols. Here, my work is deeply personal, where I draw on women and my faith tradition in my life that have taught me love, truth, and hope. My art invites others to share in this deep sense of belonging. And that is kind of my entry point into this conversation of belonging and answering the question, I know when I'm home, or I know I'm home when, and is exploring being known intimately. Being known is really risky work. It's really vulnerable, right? And I think it must start with seeing one another, as some of the artists have also mentioned tonight. And with my work, I invite people to see these different fragile moments of knowing, and to see something larger. And in my faith tradition, that is called the spirit. That's what we call. And belief in this connectedness forms purpose beyond the day-to-day routine that says, I know you, and you belong here. Next, please. In my childhood home, I grew up on a dirt road. It was probably the only dirt road in the urban city. I lived about right north of Detroit, actually, and we lived on this dirt road, and we would ride our bikes. And during the springtime, around this time of year, we would jump in the puddles, and we would also have like contests where we would see who could cross the street the fastest barefoot. So I've always loved dirt and mud. So now today I'm an artist, and I also get to continue to play with dirt and mud. And so this is an in-process video of one of the forms that I really love to create using pinching and hand building techniques. Sometimes I also use like my hand as a press mold or a form to create the different shapes that I use in my work. Next slide. And this is the last piece that is on view, Form in Motion, Bisque Clay and Ceramic on Slip. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share my work.
Thank you so much, Joanna. This was a really fun piece to see come together. So in addition to the other ones that you're showing. So thank you so much. Next, we're going to be hearing from Heriberto Brosas. Eddie is a Northfield photographer who explores community and belonging in his work. And please take it away, Eddie.
Well, thank you, everybody. It's an honor to be here. And yeah, I'm a photographer, and I do videos on weddings and parties. But years ago, I know Cecilia when she was doing the movie Ways Would Be at Home. It's a movie about immigrants from the place where I'm come from Mexico. And that's when I know her. And last year with COVID, all the events what I have scheduled, they canceled. So Cecilia invited me to this project to say their names. about what happened in Minneapolis with the death of George Floyd. So we started taking pictures and trying to document what we do. And these pictures are about that. So we use chalk to write down the names. And in this picture, I try to catch what we use, but at the same time, the colors for me represents all the colors. Life, people is in different colors, and we can live all together. Next, please. And then everything starts changing. People start coming and start doing the names in the signs or different ways. So I take the drone and I told this show to have a better view, because I think it starts changing like a pieces of art. And this view show the colors, the names, and that's what's showed with the drone. So next, please. So and then for me is, like I said before, I do weddings and parties, but this is different. You have to, you see how the people is doing something and trying to raise the voice and support these say their names actions. So when I see the people doing that, I try to catch that, and at the same time add elements like where people is doing that, because now is the way to show other people's or invite by media. So I take this picture and I know the person, and then the building is everybody know this building in Northfield. Next, please. And I also was invited to Women's March and Stand Up for Northfield. And in this picture was in the Women's March. And I know everybody say that, but it's really important to see or think what our kids are seeing us. What are we doing with the world? And it's really important. In this picture, when I see the girl, she is really watching. She's really seeing what is people doing, and we should take care of what we do, because the children they are watching us and they are learning from us. So we better try to make changes for them in the future. And also this picture is in Stand Up for Northfield, what is on Mondays. It's also something about Black Lives Matter. And I know it's really hard, all these things happening, but it's important also support this kind of events, because it's important, like I say in the other picture, life, people, we are in colors. So if we mix the colors, we can create a better world. And yeah, well, thank you, and sorry for my bad English. This is a short film, what I did when I met Cecilia. She invited me to do a video about the river. And it was made in the winter. And I tried to catch the river, the water, the snow, because it's something really, really represented from Minnesota and for our town, Northfield. And obviously the river represents a lot of Northfield for everybody, I think. So thank you, and I hope you like.
Thank you so much, Eddie. Thank you for sharing your thoughts behind your photographs and your film. Next, we're going to be hearing from Ian Turnage Butterbaugh, and he is also a recent resident of Northfield and is a photographer exploring layers in time. And please take it away, Ian.
Thank you. My name is Ian Turnage Butterbaugh, and I'm a fine art and impressionist photographer here in Northfield. I just want to thank Heather and the Northfield Arts Guild for the opportunity to display my work. And thank you for the attendees. It's an honor to be able to show you my work. Special shout out to my mom, who's here from South Carolina. I haven't seen her in a year and a half, and she's never been able to come to any of my exhibitions. So hi, Mom. I was able to contribute 3 multiple exposure photographs to the exhibition, each of which comprise a series called Collective Perspective Northfield. Each piece in the series is a multiple exposure opacity blend combining 21 to 35 individual photographs of objects or landmarks in Northfield. Each of them are taken from a different distance or angle, and the result is a collection of our perspectives of Northfield. So I was really inspired by the exhibition's call to consider how we experience Northfield and how each of our experiences are a little bit different. When we move through our community, we experience it from our perspective, but what we're drawn to, what we engage with, what we notice, and what we overlook can vary pretty considerably. So each of those perspectives are still valid and valuable. So by combining multiple photographs from various angles and distances, the viewer is presented with the details that they might otherwise overlook. As a result, it's my hope that viewers see Northfield from a new perspective and have a deeper appreciation of how our community is experienced collectively. So in this first photograph, this is a composite of 25 exposures of different light posts along Division Street in downtown Northfield. And what stands out to me is how the multiple exposures create a lot of texture and add details from various parts of downtown Northfield. If you're able to see this in person, I'd like to say that the experience you might have with some of my work is limited only by what you fail to notice. Next slide, please. The second photograph is a composite of 35 exposures of the same tree as I walked all the way around it. And to me, it results in an exaggerated or surreal version of the scene. And so there's a lot more detail and texture that you wouldn't notice or wouldn't see from just one perspective. Next slide. And the final photograph in the series is a composite of 21 exposures of the central block building in downtown Northfield, each again taken from a different distance or angle. Personally, this is probably my favorite in the series, and I really like how how it kind of tricks the eye into thinking that it's a graphite sketch rather than a photograph. And it also has kind of a vintage or old-timey feel to it, which makes me appreciate the building's age and makes me wonder how previous generations experienced this corner of Northfield. And I think that's it. So thanks for being here. Thanks for my time.
Thank you so much, Ian. Thank you to everybody for sharing. Thank you to all of these artists. This has just been a wonderful opportunity to showcase all of you. And thank you, Cecilia, for this concept and inviting us all in at so many different entry points to participate and to have these conversations about community and belonging and home and what we want in our communities. And so now this is the chance for all of us. I'm going to stop sharing, and so then we can see all of the artists that are here. And we are going to go to the Q&A. And so I would just encourage you to put your questions in the chat box for our artists. And I'm going to start with one of them for Cecilia. There's a question here that says, typically quilting and embroidering are craft practices that have been embraced by women. Curious to know if you found out that more women were willing to participate in the embroidery project?
Yeah, I noticed that question, and I have to say, I'm looking at the chat, and my mom is here, and my younger sister is here from Chile. So it's like, oh, yeah. So I'm really glad that they're here. And to answer that question, yes, I did find that most of the participants, yes, were women, but we did have a few male identifying people, who participated. And I think that things are changing for the better, in that sense that more men are kind of gravitating toward these craft, which I kind of like have resisted that idea of, oh, this is a craft. I think that here the artwork comes from the layer of complexity that comes from having the audio be the basis for these, and all of a sudden you're in a situation where you're looking at this quilt and yes, there is embroidery, but there is also the people who said those sentences 2 years ago, and then people here now sitting with those words and trying to convert that audio into a visual representation. So I think that the craft of it goes way beyond embroidering or quilting. But yes, in all fairness, yeah, we had a lot more women participating than men, and hopefully that can change.
Yeah, especially with the next version of the going virtual. Lots of ways to participate, no matter
exactly
how you identify. Awesome. And so just waiting for other questions to come through. I'll just ask the group here, what was your favorite part about either seeing the exhibition when it came together, because we were all doing our parts? What did you enjoy most? And is there something from this exhibition that is going to launch you into another direction because it sparked something for you? So anybody can jump in. Or we can all stare at each other and smile. I know somebody's got work going, because I know, Megan, you've got your series taken off, and so.
Well, I'm quite excited about Tony's purse book, purse book. Help me out, Tony. What is
Purse
it?
poems.
Purse
Yeah.
poems, right. And I had an exhibit with pinafores that were hanging on coat hangers, one for each month, and next to it were pockets with little pocket books in it. And I might just circle back to the idea of a pocket book in a pocket on something, and make them, the ones I made were small and not as elaborate, not as complex as what Tony made. And so I might just circle back to the idea of a book in a pocket to make it a pocket book. So thank you, Tony.
Well, thank you, Ricky. And you might notice that Karen Wee's poem in there, I think it's about a chickadee who speaks French, is in a little pocket. Did you see that by any chance?
I'm aware of her poem. No, I have to look for that.
A little pocket and put her French-speaking chickadee in the pocket.
That and many other things you will see when you come in and look closely. And I invite you to come and spend some time at this exhibition when you can come see it in person. And I'm just checking to see lots of compliments to our artists, well deserved, in the chat box. I think I will turn it over to Cecilia to do some closing remarks. And if you do have questions for these artists, you can always reach out to me and I would be happy to forward those questions to these artists later on. So please take it away, Cecilia.
Well, I would like to say thank you again to everyone and invite you to come and actually see the exhibit in person. You know, all the protocols to protect you from like what would be renegade or like rogue COVID, you know, have been taken. I also would like to invite you to participate in the next step of the Wandering House, which will be, like I said, virtual, where you will be able to participate just by uploading audio to the website. We are going to take the Wandering House to the Guild for the two closing, like the last weekend that the show will be open. So it will be there for you to pick in if you want to, and, you know, kind of I don't know. I think it's a really neat space to be. So even if you can have the chance to just go in and out, I think it will be worth your while. But other than that, yeah, I just would like to, thank everyone. And I know we haven't touched on these very much, but that's what I'm hoping to do with this work, to make sure that we can have more difficult conversations sometimes that come up with this idea of community and what does that mean. Because I think that Northfield, it's an incredible place that could be a lot better for certain sectors of the community that don't feel as welcome as we may. And so the audio work, it's really pointing in that direction, kind of getting to those more difficult spaces that are hard to navigate. So again, I hope that you will come and see the exhibit. Let us know what could be better, how would this work better, not just for my own projects, but for everyone's here. So thank you so much, Heather. Thank you so much. I mean, really, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Cecilia. And on that note, I will just tell you that we're open Wednesday through Saturday, and you can find the hours of the Guild's open hours on our website, northfieldartsguild.org. And this show does run through May 15th, so you still have some time to come in and see it in person. And I just want to encourage you to come and spend some time with it. And it is such an incredible multi-layered show, and so many entry points for artists in our community to have these conversations. So thank you so much to all of our artists who participated tonight. And I just want to, let's give them all a round of applause. Yay! All at home, yay! Woo! Congratulations. This recording will be up on the Guild's website by tomorrow if you want to share with folks who weren't able to join live or experience it again. And so thank you all for being here. Thank you for letting us showcase all of you. And thank you, Cecilia, for this amazing concept and letting us be a part of this, of the Wandering House and the Notions of Home and the Embroidery Project. And so thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
Good night, everybody.
Heather, can you stay?